We never know. Oh no, we're live.
There it is. We're live, everybody. Welcome in. It is, what's today? Thursday, December 14th, 1 p.m. Central. I am joined here by Jason Cammisa from Hagerty. Jason has been an automotive journalist for almost 20 years now, and this dude is one of the most knowledgeable auto guys you'll ever meet. And with Hagerty for the last, I think, 3 or so years, right, Jason? I believe.
Yep.
He's been creating awesome content with those guys, and I highly recommend you go check out Hagerty. They just did a review of the Cybertruck, which is going to be one of the main topics we'll talk about today. But they do everything, and I call them the new Top Gear. You heard it here probably the 10th millionth time if you're a car enthusiast potentially. So, Jason, thank you so much for joining us, man. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Yes, sir. Me too. So the big topic I want to talk about today is, I think, so my channel, I get a lot of folks that are EV enthusiasts, specifically around Tesla. And you guys put out a review of the Tesla Cybertruck about 2 weeks ago now. I think 2 weeks to the date it came out. And I think you may have had the Cybertruck a week before y'all published. Is that correct? So it's
couple
like 3 weeks?
A couple weeks, yeah. We Tesla sort of approached me, and the way we film is a little bit different than I think most YouTubers. I tend to experience stuff. I go away, I write a script, and then we write a shot list and a plan, and then come back and film it. And I think there was about a week in between the preview that Tesla gave me at the Fremont factory and then us filming at Sonoma Raceway. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, and then we spit it out as quickly as we could, because Tesla sort of gave us an embargo date, and I'm like, yeah, we need 2 months, and they're like, how about 2 weeks?
2 weeks is like it's a thing in the Tesla culture where, you know, Elon's always saying 2 weeks for stuff, and then of course that's how those guys are wild. So I'm curious, now that it's been almost like a month, let's say a little bit over a month since you've been separated, or like, you know, so say 3 weeks to a month that you've been separated from that experience. What is going through your mind now as it pertains to the car? Are you still holding the same sort of feelings you had from the review? You also had a follow-up conversation on your podcast, Carmudgeons, which was a fascinating sort of deep dive into how you were thinking about the car. Have your thoughts evolved at all since you've been separated now for a few weeks from that experience?
Not really. I mean, my thoughts about the car, I haven't been in one since, so there's not been really much to change. I kind of have to separate everything into my job as an automotive journalist and then my person, Jason, who is a person. My opinions on the car are kind of not really relevant from a personal standpoint. From a automotive review standpoint, what I did was I had access to the car. We had a really limited amount of time. We had about a quarter of the time that we typically do. And I thought, how do I make this interesting, and how do I make it different? Because I knew that Marquez was getting the car, and I knew that Top Gear was getting the car. Initially it was going to be a sort of walk around and talk around, and we decided, let's see if we can find a way to show people some of the stuff rather than telling them about it, because that's IMHO taking full advantage of the medium that we were given. So, we spent the time with the car, and it was my job to present all of the learnings that I had from my time with Tesla and from spending time with the Cybertruck. None of that's changed at all. My personal opinion on the truck really wasn't and isn't relevant. Like, you guys don't care what I think, right?
I do.
Well, thank you. But I mean, that's my job. So I really do make a very clear distinction between what my job is. My professional opinion about the truck is that it did a lot of things to advance the art of the automobile. It sort of kicked a whole bunch of suppliers in the ass, to be blunt, about moving on and bringing the automobile into the current day. And, the cars are just really kind of built the way they were, in pickup trucks especially, 70 years ago. And it's little things that I had to cut from the script, annoyingly, but Tesla got rid of fuses. I think that got cut from the script. But the whole idea that, you have all of these integrated circuit boards that can control things. You don't need fuses. You don't need to have a power wire going from a battery to an alternator to every single individual point, when you can start using a CAN to control things. So it's just a really, ground up rethink is maybe a little bit aggressive, but it really is a full rethink of how to integrate modern manufacturing techniques and electronics into something that was stuck in the past. And that's, I think, the headline story. I think, I'm not going to tell people whether to like the truck or not. That's up to them. But I did really go through this wow moment when I started looking under the skin. And I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be a Model S with a crazy body on it. But hats off to the Tesla engineers who actually made a big difference in the industry. I mean, the response has been clear. The Ford's response is, hey, this is great for the whole industry. And that was, I think, the headline story, not what does it look like? And, not even how quick is it? It's a world record. I had to talk about it because it's relevant, but to me, the big story is, wow, this thing is genuinely different.
Yeah, I can tell you, as somebody who's close to, I monitor Tesla closely, I monitor the EV space closely. The one thing that's always sort of stuck out to me about their products is just the amount of engineering that goes into how they think about building the products is different. I remember back when Sandy Monroe tore down the Model 3, which I believe, didn't you just speak with Sandy yesterday?
Yeah.
Isn't he awesome? He's the sweetest dude ever. Yeah, he's great.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the amount of stories that guy has is like insane. And we share the same birthday. We were both born January 19th. I learned that 2 weeks ago. So we're bonded by a birthday. He's great.
By astrology.
That's right. And so I remember when they first tore down the Model 3, but was it 2016, 2017, initially it was, oh my God, this thing is a piece of crap, the build quality is crap. And so much of it was legitimate criticism that I think, one hopes Tesla takes and continues to work on. But the thing that was really impressive, I guess, about that teardown that really got him was the integration between everything, the integration between the electronic systems and the drivetrain and just how the car sort of is connected to each other. And it looks like they're taking that even further with the Cybertruck. How, from your experience, how rare is that in the automotive world? Is it? Do you think it's a symptom of the culture at these companies, or is it just, or does it just take a different type of crew to make something like this happen? I'm curious to get your take there.
Sure. The last time I can remember something like this, E31 and E32 BMWs, which were the 7 Series from, 1988, and then 8 Series shortly thereafter, were the first to use a CAN bus, right? That was a ooh-ah moment. And it was so unreliable that BMW had abandoned it. The next time we saw a major change like that was BMW again did a fully new electrical architecture, E65 7 Series, and that was 2002 model year, and they abandoned that and never used it again. And so, you have other sort of advances where car companies will say, like Toyota did a fully integrated vehicle dynamics system, right? And so there are small advances like those things, but often they result in dead ends. And then often they're just kind of a small step, like, for example, I pointed out 48 volt mild hybrids and 48 volt other stuff. It takes two different things to happen to make big changes in the car industry. Number one is the person at the wheel has to understand enough about the engineering behind the car, and have the willpower to push that through. And there have been many, many examples of this. Elon is one. Henry Ford was certainly one. Ferdinand Piëch is probably the best example I can give. This is a man who was behind the Volkswagen Group, Porsche, then Audi, and a little bit Mercedes, but then ran the Volkswagen Group and created this Goliath of a car company because he was technically minded and wasn't afraid to push. But the big difference between even something like the Volkswagen Group under Dr. Piëch and Tesla under Elon is that Tesla is fully vertically integrated, or near as makes no difference, fully integrated, and has the willpower and the ability to push back on suppliers in a way that other car companies just don't have the political wherewithal to do. So the industry's been trying to go to a 48 volt low voltage bus for 30 years. I remember reading about it when I was a kid, and I'm fucking old now. This is ridiculous. And so,
I told you before, you look great, bro. Come on.
But I have been reading car magazines for almost 40 years. It's horrifying. I've been reading this kind of stuff forever, and it just took somebody to say, listen, we're not going to be beholden to suppliers. Modern car companies don't really do much other than assemble parts that they buy from suppliers. There's a reason for that. I understand the business side of that, but there's a huge drawback, which is that, a supplier comes out with rear wheel steering, for example, or electric power steering, which is something that happened 10 years ago. And every car company had no choice but to adopt that new system, even if they didn't want it. And the flip side of that is when the suppliers in the industry don't want to make a change because they don't want to invest the money in doing it, or they're not sure that all of their clients want it, nothing happens. And so that's the big difference. It's a combination of having somebody in charge who understands the engineering side of it and is willing to push. And then on the other side, vertical integration where you're not dependent on suppliers. IMO.
So the interesting thing there is, do you think so? I mean, clearly you're a car enthusiast. Haggerty is a car enthusiast publication. There's so many car enthusiasts out there. And do you think this sort of hesitancy by these businesses to try and approach vehicles in that manner of just, let's try to rethink how we build a car? Do you think the car enthusiasts scene, do you think people are, perhaps they have, that type of thought process has prevented a lot of great cars from being built in the last 20 to 30 years? Or do you think this is sort of has there been has the number of great cars gone down because of that type of thinking is the question I'm trying to ask.
Probably. I mean, I will say that some of my favorite cars, personally, and some of I think the biggest engineering achievements have happened in the last 10 years. I mean, there have been incredible progresses. However, I mean, the reality is, if without a reason to not be lazy, people just get lazy. And, I think what we see is periods of innovation and then periods of stagnation. For example, the 1980s, out of the necessity of coming out of the fuel crisis and corporate average fuel economy and emissions regulations, all of a sudden, everyone had to get off their asses and had to start inventing. And so you finally got rid of these 30-year-old designs that the American car companies were proffering to the U.S. market, with body on frame, Leviathan, 7-liter engine, blah, 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 blah. Charming, yes, but they hadn't changed in 30 years. And all of a sudden you have these imports and, the Hondas and Toyotas and Volkswagens, and all of a sudden they're twin cam and they rev to $7,000 and they get 35 miles per gallon and then Mercedes just basically unzips their pants and it hits the ground and rolls across the street through a plate glass window and says, we have an R&D budget big enough that Mercedes accomplished. I mean, that's a terribly tasteless joke, but Mercedes did really shit on the entire industry and did 20 years worth of research in the early 1980s. Basically, they set it up with when the W201 came out, the 190E, which I talk a lot about because it's a landmark car. That car debuted a whole bunch of technologies and kicked off a revolution of engineering that is still being all used. And so here we are 30, 40 years later, and nothing's happening. Well, Tesla was the one to say, you know what, enough of this crap, right? That was great in 1982. It was great in 1985. It was still okay in 1988. But by the time we got to 2000 and 2010, it's time to really disrupt. I thought, I'm on the record of saying this, I got the first ever loan in the Tesla Roadster. I thought I was going to shit all over it. I thought I was going to hate it. I genuinely thought, this is dumb. Why would you take a Lotus Elise and ruin it? Took me 50 feet, changed my mind completely. I was like, oh my God, it's not just, first of all, again, it doesn't matter what I think, but this is a better way. Maybe not for a sports car, but wow, I can't wait to see where this company goes. Same thing with Model S. Every time it was, I've been like, wow, this is changing. I don't know if it's better. And then you experience it and it is. And so Here we are. Same thing with the Cybertruck. I went in genuinely thinking it was a bad joke. I mean, saw it on stage. I'm like, oh God, we all saw the window breakage. We saw the rest of it. Okay, ha ha ha, PR campaign. And then I forgot, because it's been a while, that Tesla doesn't just do crazy stuff. They do crazy stuff with amazing engineering behind it. Ta-da, look who was wrong.
So I'm curious. So what is your personal take on this vehicle?
I mean, I'm a big fan of small cars. I like naturally aspirated engines. I like high revving, screaming motors. I like manual transmissions. I like cars that prioritize the experience over speed. And so I come from a very different perspective than I think pickup truck buyers do. With that said, I love an F-150. Maybe it's because my passport says US of A on it, but there's something about a big dumb pickup truck that just I love. They're mile eaters. You can sit in a full-size pickup truck or a GMC Tahoe or Chevy Tahoe or any of these enormous body-on-frame Leviathans and drive over the small cars that I love, not feel them, hit anything, not care about it. And they're fast and they're comfortable. And I'll take a Raptor R every day, once a day, twice on Sunday. Yes. So I approach trucks a little bit differently because there's a sort of this isn't my brand and I shouldn't like this guilty pleasure part of the trucks. And then when I drove the O&T, I was like, man, this is a really good modern automobile that happens to be a pickup truck. And it really does a good job at balancing, I think, a lot of the benefits of a pickup truck without a lot of the drawbacks of, sort of modern construction. And then the Cybertruck comes along and, from an aesthetic standpoint, not my bag. I mean, I think it's a hell of a statement and it looks incredible. I don't think it looks beautiful, but I think it looks incredible. And I love the engineering push. I love how different it is. I don't want one personally because it just doesn't fit any of my needs. I feel like it's, in the same way that I don't want a Lamborghini Huracan, which is a great car. I just don't want to make that statement. I don't want the things that it does well are not important to me, put it that way. So
got it.
Great. Cybertruck is a hell of an engineering achievement. I have no use for one. I'll, move back onto praising the Subaru BRZ for being stupid fun.
Okay, that makes sense. Where do you see this going from here? If you were to try and say, predicting the future is almost impossible. I mean, literally impossible. But let's say, given the knowledge you have, how you've studied the history of this market and sort of what you've seen, all the different cycles the automotive industry has had in the past few years. If you were to have your best guess on how this vehicle performs in the next 5 years, what does that look like in your mind?
I mean, look, part of the reason why the Cybertruck is so captivating to everyone, and Marquez's video got 18 million views in a couple weeks, and I mean, even mine did 4.5. I mean, this is nuts. Part of the reason is because nobody knows, right? This is so different and so uncharted, and the big debate is, does this actually appeal to pickup truck customers? The ones that we think are pickup truck customers who use their trucks for construction sites and stuff like that. On paper, it should. I don't know if it will. And that's the big, huge, enormous question mark and why we're all so fascinated by this. I think you can't, as a market, if I were working for another car company, ignore this. You can't ignore the fact that there are 1 million plus deposits or 2 million. I don't even know how many there are. It doesn't matter. You can't ignore the publicity. And I think they're all sort of do their own, I'm going to be insulting to them, pathetic attempt at copycatting. The sort of weak, tepid, we're going to stick our toes in this water. So you're going to see some stupid car is going to have a fucking stainless steel hood and be like, because Cybertruck did it. And that's exactly what's going to happen.
I hope not.
They all do it. Every single time somebody makes a splash, everyone copies it. But I normally I'm a little bit more willing to try to predict the future, but the only thing I can say is there's going to be a lot of copycat stuff that's not full send the way that Cybertruck is. And there's no question about it. The industry will now adopt 48 volt, low voltage plus side stuff. That will change. I think steer by wire will be more readily accepted. There are a lot of benefits from that. I hope to hell not on sports cars, but on vehicles where feedback and enjoyment isn't the primary reason, there's a bunch of benefits to be had by individual things that Tesla did, and I think you'll see that being adopted.
Gotcha. And so just for the audience that perhaps is not familiar with this, the reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, the reason why you wouldn't want steer-by-wire in a sports car is because with steer-by-wire system, because you don't have the wheel directly connected to the front tires, you don't really feel the road the way is ideal when you're cornering, and you want the full feel of the road in a sports car. Is that a good way of summarizing why?
It is. And let me just also put a little asterisk. I'm a steering nerd beyond belief. And, the way I see it is you have very few touch points with your car. Your ass is on a seat. Your feet are on pedals, and you don't really get all that much through the pedals. You can get a little bit of brake feel. You can get, you can feel the effort curve on the clutch, whatever. But your primary interaction with the car is your two hands, which are on a steering wheel. And between your ass and the steering wheel of a communicative car, you can make it do things that are the type of things I do in my videos. I slide cars around all the time. I drive at the limit or way above it, and I get to do crazy stuff with cars. That gets infinitely more difficult when you remove your primary interface between you and a car. And you're just relying on your butt. If you don't feel anything through the steering wheel, you're just relying on one input. And there's a reason why there are triple redundant sensors in that steer-by-wire system. There's a reason why there are triple redundant sensors in the planes that fly by wire. When you go down to just one input, you're just not in as much control. I don't think it's relevant for a Cybertruck. I don't think it's relevant for most transportation devices. But for something that's a sports car that wants to give you a good time, the more interaction I have with the actual mechanical bits, the happier I am. And so that's why.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. So the company has set a goal of, I think, 200 to 250,000 units per year for the Cybertruck that they're planning to reach sometime by the end of 2025, let's say. Do you think that's a sustainable level of sales for this truck? If you were just to think about, okay, is there that much demand globally for this thing to hit 250 a year?
Globally, I'm going to say no. I mean, I don't know if there are any plans. I don't know that Tesla has any plans to sell this outside the US. I don't think it would be possible. I don't think it's going to pass, Europe.
Australia, maybe. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, that's a good point. Look at the number of pickup trucks. When we all talk about the best-selling car in the US, it never includes the pickup trucks because the pickup trucks are A, categorized differently by the government, but B, the numbers are astronomical. I mean, we're, seven figures for each of them. And so ish, or two of the three of them.
4 million a year, I think, combined.
Yeah, that is an absolutely ludicrous amount of vehicles. And so, a couple 100,000 of them technically should be possible. I guess the only question is, are the pickup truck drivers or the people who are willing to buy pickup trucks, do they share Elon's vision and Tesla's vision of what a pickup truck should look and perform like? And I don't know. I mean, on the face of it, 250 should be possible, but I think that also requires, the sort of promised entry level, $50,000, $80,000 trucks. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff about the price, but the reality is the average pickup truck prices are shockingly
$70K.
Like
that.
I mean, for those of us who don't live in that world, like $70,000, like that buys an old Ferrari or two. Like, wow.
Yeah.
But people are really willing to spend that. So I don't think the $100,000 Cyber Beast is priced inappropriately. I don't know how much demand there's going to be, but because I don't know who's going to buy this and I don't know how they're going to use it.
Yeah. How, so the look of the truck is really the hallmark of this vehicle to start, right? I mean, the first thing you see about a car is when you look at it, you're like, oh, it's beautiful. It's not beautiful, right? Or it looks crazy. It doesn't look crazy. I remember when the PT Cruiser first came out, it was freaking everywhere. And the whole time I was like, this is the ugliest car I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe everyone's buying this car. And then it's sort of like, kind of like just disappeared over time. What happened there with the PT Cruiser anyway? Like, are you familiar with its history? Did people just stop buying it? Like,
I mean, the PT Cruiser was based on a Chevy design from, the 20s, I guess. Here's the thing, no matter how outrageous a car is, no matter how outrageous any shape is, you see enough of it and it just becomes normal. And so, if you think back to the 1986 Ford Taurus, for example, that looked like, that was the first aero bubble car, and it looked like a spaceship. You don't even notice it now because
I'm going to pull up a picture of it.
Yeah, you should. And it's one of these things that if you look at it, you're like, oh, that's a normal car. But it was one of the first cars without a grille. It was one of the first cars with flush headlights. It was one of the first cars with doors that went into the roof. And there are so many design features of that car that have managed to just weasel their way into every car on the road, some forever and some temporarily, that we don't even think of that. But that was a spaceship. So I think the Cybertruck will be the same way. If they sell 200,000 a year of them, we're not even going to notice them.
This guy, right?
That guy. That's the one.
Yeah. 1986 Ford Taurus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you look at it, it's got an air dam with air intakes for the radiator that below the bumper. That wasn't done. With no real grill, that wasn't done. Flush headlights wasn't done. Flush glass wasn't done. A seamless greenhouse where the bottom of the windows is just one contiguous shape. It certainly wasn't done in American cars. The doors went into the roof. I mean, there was just absolute innovation after innovation after innovation. Blew the minds of the design world. And everyone on this podcast looking at that's going, what? That thing?
Yeah.
Becomes normal.
So is it fair to say it becomes normal because more automakers decided to sort of take styling hints from this vehicle and put it on theirs, or did it become normal on its own?
Yes, both.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if we think about other cars that were really polarizing designs that, for example, the 7 Series BMW, the E65 7 Series, which was the 2002 7 Series, it was the bustle butt car, the bangle butt. Everyone called it, names. I would put it in the top 10 most hideous cars of all time. But you don't even notice them anymore. They're driving around. They're $1,500 now. And it's not like it was a 300,000 per year car that you see everywhere. You see them, but we're so familiar with that shape, we don't notice it. Ditto with the crazy 10th generation Civic that look like a spaceship. Don't even notice them anymore. So part of it is we get used to the shape, and then the other part is that when we see it over and over and over again, it just stops shocking. It's the ones that we never see. DeLorean. You see a DeLorean on the road? That's a shape you haven't seen in a long time. I drive a bunch of old cars, but one of them is a VW Scirocco. And I mean, people chase me down and take pictures of it. And it's because it's a shape they used to see, but they don't anymore. And so that's when it stands out. The stuff that you see on a regular basis blends in. PT Cruiser, Chevy HHR, which was a copy of the PT Cruiser, which was a copy of a Chevy. Don't even notice them.
Yeah. Interesting. And you feel that the Cybertruck, even though it just looks absolutely, unlike anything else on the road today, in due time, you believe that this vehicle is going to sort of have the same, after 10 years time, it's just going to be like, okay, that's just a triangle on wheels. It's a polygon.
It depends on how many they sell, how many Tesla sells. But if they do sell 50,000 a year or 250,000, yeah, absolutely. We won't even notice it. It may have this sort of, if it's a success and it inspires a lot of other stuff, it'll be like, oh yeah, that was the OG that looked like this. If it's a failure and they sell, a couple 100,000 of it, we may look at it like we do the Hummer H3, which we're like, what was everyone thinking? But you see a Hummer H3 on the road, which is, a regular Chevy that's disguised to look like a Hummer. Yeah. No one even notices it. And that wasn't a particular success. And it was really upsetting and polarizing when it came out. People got mad when they saw them. We're just used to it. So I really do. I mean, unless it's something like the Lamborghini LM02 that I had in my video, or the DeLorean, where they sold a couple thousand or 301 of them, and you never see them, I think they'll fade into normalcy.
Gotcha. How is the Tesla brand viewed by, let's say, like folks in the car enthusiast circles, like people that really love cars and it's sort of, part of their identity in a way. How is the brand viewed by those folks, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I live in the Bay Area, and so we're a little bit weird. We're a little bit no, but I think we're a little bit ahead, right? I honestly think, and I don't mean this to disparage anyone else in the US, but I think we're a little bit ahead. And it's not like, oh, look at us more advanced than you. Please don't take it to mean that way. But tech rolls out here first. And 10 years ago, we weren't paying for parking meters. This is an example I use all the time. Parking meters with change. We were paying with them with our phones. And I just we're just kind of used to stuff. They're self-driving cars all over San Francisco driving themselves around. No one even notices them anymore. And so Tesla started here, and it's the best-selling car. Teslas are the best-selling mark and the best-selling car around here. You can't go 3 inches without tripping over a Model Y. And they have taken over as the enthusiast vehicle of choice here, which is amazing. My twin lives in South Carolina, and she bought a Model S. And she's like, everywhere I go, everyone's stopping me and saying, oh my God, like, is this a spaceship? Where do you put the gas? Does it take the super premium electric gas? Or like, everyone's just really confused about it, to the point where she was going to make some pithy, license plate on it about like Jetsons and stuff like that. I'm like, but I literally could look out my window right now and point out 4 Model Ys, 3, So with that little caveat, the sort of car community here has adopted EVs and specifically Teslas as their daily driver. Everyone I know, anecdotally, who used to drive a BMW M product or a 3 Series now drives a Model 3, without exception. They all sort of have sports cars too, right? If you're quote unquote a real car person, you have a sports car, a weekend car, you have a Miata or some old pile of shit leaking, Alfa Romeo that puts a smile on your face.
S2000 if you're lucky.
S2000, right. But they've sort of all come to the conclusion that, on a daily basis, I'd rather just be in a Model 3 or Y or S or Plaid or whatever it is. I drive an e-Golf every day. I talk about that probably too much. We sort of, once you live with an EV every day, you kind of can't go back. And so even me, 10 gas-powered cars, 1 EV. And the EV is the one that I take to the grocery store because I don't have to warm it up, don't have to change the oil, don't have to think about it. So I think, Tesla Model 3, especially because of performance model, Plaid because of the performance model, had really became the de facto car fans' daily transportation device here.
Got it. So, and then from the standpoint of electrification, so do you think that this will be the normal mode of transportation, let's say in the 2030s in the United States?
Okay, look, there are a lot of different sizes.
Exact answers only. No, I'm just kidding.
The exact answer is I have no clue. No, look, I can answer this from an automotive journalist and automotive expert standpoint. And I would say this is a better method of transportation for most people. Most people don't need to be carrying around a, internal combustion engine furnace with its own exhaust after treatment plant bolted to it and all this complexity and all this other crap to go the 3 miles a day that they drive. Whether society wants that is a different story. And I certainly don't have the answer to that. I will say that it certainly appears that throughout the world, and this is a key point, it's not just the US playing here. Throughout the world, the decision has been made that we're moving to electrification. Whether we can stop that momentum, I don't know. I frankly don't think so, because once you have all of Europe looking that way and all of Asia looking in that direction, it just stops the major car manufacturers from being able to make a business case to continue to make internal combustion engines. So, the next round of all cars from the traditionals is going to be electric because they don't have a choice but to comply with the regulations in Europe. And so you want to make a car just for the US market or just for Texas or just for, any one small location, the financials don't work. And so I think everyone's going to be pushed in that direction, kind of whether they like it or not, because governments have decided that this is the right thing to do for our environment. And I can't speak on that. I am not an expert. I mean, it certainly seems that it's the right thing to do based on the information that I have, but that's not I don't swim in that pool.
Sure. Yeah. The one thing I'm interested to get your opinion on is, so one of the theories folks have, and this is sort of where I'm landing as well, that are thinking about this electrification sort of movement, let's say, or like, everything's sort of moving over to electrified drivetrains. I don't know why I'm saying this so complicated. We're going to electric vehicles. My God, what am I doing? And one of the theories is that the legacy automakers don't seem well equipped to survive the transition because of a mixture of culture, the amount of assets and debt they have that's tied to the ICE drivetrain. So how do you view the transition from a legacy automaker's perspective? And do you think they will, let's say, do you think they will survive the next couple decades, or do you think it's going to be a lot of new entrants, especially from China, especially if we're talking about electrification taking over, that will become the new normal? Have you thought about that? Do you have any thoughts there?
Oh, I think about it all the time. I mean, it's really hard to predict. I thought that Dieselgate was going to ironically be the thing that kicked Volkswagen into high gear to invest so heavily in EVs that they would be the leading force in EVs of the traditional automakers. And unfortunately, Dieselgate happened at the same time that the driving force behind Volkswagen's technical innovation and expertise passed away. I mean, left and then passed away. And that's Dr. Piech, who I talked about. And this is a company that's now scrambling, tripping over their own genitalia, trying to get these cars out. And they just can't do it. And my prediction was like, oh, they're going to completely shit on everyone else. They're going to be so far ahead. And I was dead wrong. Volkswagen's electric products are not good. Actually, most of Volkswagen's group's products are all heading in the wrong direction. So whoops. And then I think, oh, well, hold on. Mercedes, engineering powerhouse, engineered like no other. And for a long time, they really meant that. Their electric offerings, no good. I mean, really no good. And so, then I look at BMW, who I thought was DOA. I mean, BMW has sort of lost the plot and failed to sort of understand what made it special to begin with and what made its brand. And I just totally was administering last rites to that company. And now in my own sort of head, in my predictions, I can't foretell the future, but I can only see what I see. And here they come around and they debut the new Neue Klasse, which is the new class, which is the using the name that they used when they resurrected the company in the 1960s, and sort of started that was the spark that has landed BMW where it is right now. They have this new class, a Neue Klasse, that doesn't share a single part with a single other BMW in history and is a clean sheet car from the ground up. I saw their concept of this, but I think, wow, hold on. If they're willing to throw out everything they've learned and rethink the automobile from start to finish, maybe those last rites weren't relevant. So it's all over the map. Every time I make a prediction about something, it just goes the complete opposite way. I will say you're right. There's no question that China is positioning the Chinese automotive producers are positioning themselves for a worldwide win. Europe is seeing it, with the sort of traditionals not being able to compete on price or functions or features or desirability with a lot of the Chinese imports. And we're next. I mean, I don't see any other way to avoid that unless the Chinese automakers make the same mistake that they did 15 years ago when we thought they were coming in, which was to have truly substandard products that didn't meet consumer expectations. I think we're past that. I think that was try one. I think everyone learned from it. And so hold on. It's going to be a bit of a rough ride for the traditionals.
Yeah. One of the things that I've heard, and this was actually Sandy has talked about this before, and I wonder if you agree, Sandy Monroe, do you think there's parallels between what's going on with electrification, specifically with the Chinese automakers, and let's even lump Tesla in there? Do you see parallels between that and the Japanese invasion of the Western markets in the 1980s?
Oh, yeah. That was exactly what I mentioned before. With 1980s, you had these, to use the offensive term of the time, Jap traps that, the people were like, what is this? What is this? What is this chintzy little Honda and whatever? And guess what? They were better cars in every way. And it's the same. Maybe I shouldn't say in every way, but they were better cars. They were better consumer products, and they won. They won over the consumers despite the really bad reputation that people had at the time of Japanese cars, which were copycat, chintzy, crappy, blah, 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 blah. Well, we don't say that about Toyota anymore. And we don't say that about Honda. And we don't say that about Mazda. But people certainly did back in the day. And I think it's the same exact thing that's going to happen with the upstarts, right? People are, Tesla's body panels, blah, 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 panel gaps. We're not going to say that in 10 years. And, Tesla's proven the consumer just doesn't care about panel fitment. It's fun to make fun of because it's the most obvious thing you can see, but people are buying the cars for their other merits, and it's just no longer an important metric. And so, 100% parallel to, to what we saw in the 1980s. I wasn't, I was here, but I certainly wasn't in the car market. Not that old. Right. Sandy was. He's that old.
Sandy was definitely there.
Anyway,
he bought the first Toyota that came to the United States.
Exactly.
Yeah, that it's interesting that so the panel gap fit and finish question, like the thing that always gets brought up with Tesla is so fascinating because I've owned Tesla since 2016. Before that, I had a Mazda 6 stick. Before that, I had a Saab 9.3. It's these cute little cars that I really enjoy driving around. But then I shifted from a Mazda 6 stick to a Model S, and I was like, this is freaking crazy. This is nuts. But then I noticed, even though I didn't have to take it, I didn't have to pay for gas. It never freaking broke down on me. It was literally, it cost me the same per mile to operate than a Mazda 6, really, all in. But, you could notice like the panel gaps, not perfect, a couple rattles and squeaks in a couple places. But then I started looking around this day and age too, and I'm like, okay, panel gaps and stuff. And I'm looking around at other automakers, and I'm noticing like no car has very few cars have absolutely perfect build quality. You have little, gaps in the trunk area. You have little gaps in the hood, and I think it's just fascinating that that sort of Tesla has brought forward this like panel gap gate apparently that they suffer from. But I'm looking around like, bro, like this is freaking everywhere.
It's not. So I mean, the whole panel gap thing cracked me up. A friend of mine had a Model 3, and he hit the custom license plate he got was panel gaps, which people who didn't know were looking at penal gaps.
That's awesome.
But he made fun of it. But there are cars that have perfect panel gaps. It's Volkswagens, and Volkswagens have some of the best fit and finish in the business because, here we go again, Dr. Piech was a psychopath about this. But that is shown to be a traditional measure of quality that is no longer relevant to the consumer. It's no longer obvious to the consumer. No one gives a shit except for the people who are making fun of it. And okay, it's funny. But you go get a Mercedes GLA, which is, or a CLA, which are the Mexican-built front-wheel drive based cars, and absolutely no offense to Mexico. There's nothing to do with Mexico because Mexican-built Volkswagens have perfect panel gaps. But this plant in Mexico was built as a joint effort between Nissan and Mercedes-Benz, and it's just horrendous. I mean, the panel gaps on those cars are so, and this is something with a Mercedes badge on it, worse than anything I've ever seen on Tesla. The color match on the paint is terrible. The welds are hideous. You open the hood of the car and you're like, if this were a Daewoo, I would set it on fire for for posterity. What is going on? And so the panel gap thing is funny, and it's it's played out at this point, but it used to be an indicator of the overall quality of a car, and it's just not anymore. And sure, do I think Tesla has room for improvement? Sure, whatever. But the market has clearly shown those cars have other benefits. And by the way, my sister traded in or sold her Mazda 6 stick for a Model Y, which is kind of funny.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, she was like the hot mom at school. Like she's, black Mazda 6 with tinted windows, and it's a stick, and she drives like a lunatic because it's genetic. Yeah. And now she just has a refrigerator white Model Y, and she's like, this is just better. She's better at everything. I'm, I at some point need to buy her a Mazda 6 so she can have something with a stick again. But she had it long enough to make sure that both of her kids could drive stick, and that's it served its purpose.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember a few months ago, actually, I rented out a Miata, what was a soft top convertible stick, just to whip it around, because I miss driving stick. I was like, man, I miss the feel of the clutch. I miss just shifting gears and all that stuff. It's always fun, and I feel like I think over time what's going to be interesting is I think as electric vehicles become more and more popular, I wonder if there's going to be this like this, we're going to have this period of people like manual transmission cars become a lot more popular as we transition into electric vehicles, because maybe people miss that.
It's already happening. It's actually already happening. If you look at the secondhand values of collector cars that have automatics versus manuals when both are available, and it depends on the car, but in most cases where it's in all cases where it's that's a tough statement. I'm going to say in all cases, and to have somebody fight with me on this, where it's a performance-oriented car or something that's made for its drive, the manual transmission version is worth vastly more, and that can be anywhere. That premium can be 10%, 15%, or 100%. There are plenty of cases where the manual version of an old Ferrari is worth 2 times what the regular one is worth, or more, and so. That's already, we have the hashtag Save the Manuals movement that Car and Driver started, which of course I love. And but what I really think is happening is going to happen is that the electric powertrain will create an entire how do I say it? Will render all of the automatic transmission, quote unquote, sports cars completely irrelevant. It's going to be the lost generation of hypercars and supercars. You can have a manual and it's its own thing and it's a very different experience and you don't compare it to an EV. But when you have an automatic, that's when you start comparing it. And that's when it's, you start getting frustrated. Why is this shift so rough? Why does a downshift take so long? Why is the friggin' thing, that I bought some sports car with a gazillion horsepower and yet it's trying everything it can to be under 1,000 RPM in ninth gear to get me 1.1 more mile per gallon. And so my sports car doesn't respond the way my daily beater Leaf does. And so I think those will just fade away as a joke into obscurity. And I hope it's the case. And I torment all the car companies who say we're talking about the experience. Companies like Ferrari. Well, if you're talking about the experience, get rid of these friggin' manual automatics. Go back to letting me have an experience of interacting with an internal combustion engine, which is a dance. You're doing a dance with a clutch and a shifter and the gas pedal, and you're enjoying that. And it's not the same as commuting. Commuting goes electric, fun goes manual. And so 100% agree.
Yeah, awesome. No, that's I right there with you. How do you think? So this one's a controversial question, which I love to ask. How do you think the Elon brand, as of late, is impacting Tesla's brand, or do you think there is any impact there at all? Do you think those two things are married? Because I know some people
100%.
view Elon as a crazy person, sort of losing his mind. And regardless how our personal feelings about him, do you think there's any linkage there?
100%. I mean, there's a 100% link between everything Elon says and does and the image of Tesla as a car manufacturer. And I get it. I'm not going to tell anyone which side to be on, but there are clearly people, a lot of people who think he's an absolute hero and the savior of our planet. And it seems just as many people who are completely on the other side who thinks he's the Antichrist. He's the Antichrist. And the truth is, as always, probably somewhere in between. Everyone can and should make up their own minds about that. But there is no question that everything he says and does has a direct impact on Tesla. And I don't know whether it will be good or bad, but I can say there's definitely been a shift in public's perception of cars, where it used to be there was one faction of people who thought if you bought a Tesla, you are doing the right thing and sending the right message, who now think you're doing the wrong thing and sending the wrong message, and flipped. People who would have never bought a car that said Tesla on it, who are now buying cars that say Tesla on it. So it's just completely switched sides as a brand, which is probably something we've never seen before. But
interesting. Is that commentary based on your region, or just what you're seeing across the country?
Both. I mean,
Okay.
Look, again, I have eyes on the Bay Area and sort of California car culture, and but I have friends around the country, and I've lived around the country. I'm not from the West Coast, but this is a relatively recent thing. And what I'm sort of hearing, again, anecdotally, but is 5 years ago. Okay, best example. My twin lives in South Carolina, which is probably the most opposite land from San Francisco as you can get. And 10 years ago, no, it was not. You don't have in an area where sort of pickup trucks with gun racks on it are the prevailing transportation device. You just didn't see that that West Coast asshole EV thing that's ruining the world. Now here in the Bay Area, I keep hearing, again, anecdotally, I'm not doing, omnibus studies here, but I hear of people like, I'm going to have to sell my Tesla because it's just, I can't align myself with the things that Elon's saying. But on the other side of the country, they're growing. And, this is not a east-west. I don't want to start any political, it's just an observation.
No, for sure. Yeah.
And so I do really see across the country, everywhere in the Midwest and everywhere else, people are shifting in their perception of what Tesla is and means. And I think it's not based on the product, although the Cybertruck definitely looks more current Elon than it did Elon 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But yeah, it's both good and bad when a car company has a figurehead that's that prominent. But he's been pretty divisive recently, and I think I guess he probably always was, but I think he's sort of switched sides, and it's interesting to watch the consumers align or disalign with what it is he says.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there, I've been following him closely for the last 10 years. I think it's there the volume of eyes that's on him now is exponentially larger than it used to be. And I think it's him getting involved on the politics side and sort of, speaking his mind, which I 100% agree with anybody. It doesn't in my opinion, if you have a voice it. But I do think that it's been interesting to track sort of the some of the thoughts that people have had that say, hey, you probably shouldn't say anything because it's going to hurt your brand. Like brand damage has been something that's been part of the discussion when it comes to him taking sides or taking opinions or putting out his opinion on X. Do you think, like, if you were to guess, out of everyone who buys a Tesla today, what percentage of the people would you say are using that as a metric to purchase a Tesla? Like what they think of Elon? How pervasive
As
is
a
that,
factor, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
100%. I don't know of anyone, again, anecdotal. I'm not purporting to be a scientifically valid study here, but I don't know a single person who hasn't at least factored in their opinion on Elon on the purchase of that car, which is something we don't do for other car companies, right? So we, the whole world sort of looks at Tesla with a very different microscope than they do with other car companies because he's so inextricably linked with the company. I don't typically, like, I noticed afterwards that in my review of the Cybertruck, I talked about Elon a couple times. It's rare that I do that. I mean, I've talked about Andreas Preuninger, who's a German guy who runs the Porsche GT car division that makes GT3, GT3 RS, all the Boxster Spiders and stuff like that. And he's kind of a hero in the industry because he's pushing through the driving experience when the rest of Porsche tends to be not, let's say. But it's really rare that I don't want to talk about an executive. I don't do cars. I do, I don't do people. I do cars is my joke always. Yeah. And I don't care. And then here I am writing a script and I'm talking about Elon's fucking kid. So afterwards I'm like, why? Okay, did I really need to say that? Did I really need to make it about Elon? Like, could I have just said the Cybertruck comes from the desire to understand why the future doesn't look like the future, rather than saying it comes from Elon's kid asking Elon that. But I think he really does have enough of an influence on the company that it does, a lot of it, good, bad, crazy, sane, all of it does kind of come from him. So yeah, I can't think of another car company, who the figurehead had this much power. Not even Enzo Ferrari. Back in the day for sure, but obviously he's no longer here. But yeah, there is no one who has purchased a Tesla without being conscious that they are supporting the company that Elon built one way or another.
Yeah, one of the more interesting theories that I've read is that this is sort of this more vocal, let's say politically charged version of him that's more outspoken is somehow a marketing campaign for the Cybertruck. Do you buy that?
Ooh. I'm not one for conspiracy theories. I mean,
I am.
The man is not good. So look, it'd be fun to fight with you about this. I don't know. I mean, the man is wherever you fall on the Elon is Satan versus Elon is God continuum, there is one sort of irrefutable fact. The man's a genius. Whether he's using that genius to piss off a lot of people for sales or not, I don't know, because I can't keep up with him. No, I don't want to say none of us can, but he is so smart that nothing would surprise me. But on the other hand, like I watched the video a couple weeks ago of him saying, fuck you, fuck this, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And, I just sort of rolled my eyes. I'm like, okay, look, we're not used to executives of companies talking like this. Right. And in the case of his, he wasn't talking about Tesla. He was talking about a different company of his, but it's all going to reflect on Tesla. And I know I'm coming out with the Cybertruck video and I'm like, oh no. And my reaction is shut your fucking mouth. Not because I don't care what he has to say or I disagree or whatever. It's just, now you're going to drag me into this shit. Like, I just want to review the fucking car. Let's stop it. You're making my life difficult. Like, that everyone's going to hate me or love me now based on what he said. And I'm just trying to talk about the fucking Cybertruck. So, sorry for getting animated.
No, you're good. No, I love it.
But like, fuck. I have no way of knowing whether it's a sales tactic. I certainly think it is a way to generate or hold on, I don't know if it's a way to generate. It is certainly generated clicks and views and attention, and whether that's good or bad for him or Tesla, I can't predict. But he's certainly good at getting attention.
Yeah. What's fascinating on my side, because given that I run this channel and it's a lot of Tesla related stuff, I'm seeing an influx of folks that I've never seen before that have become very activated by some of the stuff that's like the GFY thing that he put out there. So it seems like there's this new crowd. Go fuck yourself.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I actually said the words.
I'm just saying.
So I said,
yeah. I should have said go fuck yourself, but I don't know why I said GFY. Go fuck yourself. But yeah, I'm not really, but okay. But I've noticed this sort of trend of just voices I've never seen before come forward. But I also saw when his rhetoric started coming through when he purchased X, I saw on the other side, let's say his traditional base for the last 10 years that were purchasing Teslas, I saw a significant percentage of them being really upset at him essentially taking a side, let's say, or being really vocal about it. And I think the point around him sort of disrupting, he's acting in a way that no other CEO has acted before. I think what I find interesting there is, as I tracked him and his companies in the past, it's very par for the course based on how he operates as a human being, which is just disrupt, just break shit. I'm just going to break this thing, and this is how I built my EV. I'm going to break this thing, how I built the rocket. But now he's breaking things in the public's eye that's a lot more subjective than objective. And I think that's what's causing a lot of the friction potentially. It's just fascinating seeing that.
It is fascinating to see it, and now I'll pull out my dust off my old psychology degree and say, look, I think the sort of autistic spectrum-like qualities that he displays occasionally in the public space are probably also to blame for his unbelievable success. Right? He's the richest man in the world. He's changed the face of transportation. He's done all these other things, and I think there's a yin and yang there where his ability to not control his mouth, let's say, which is a talent I've also always possessed, much to my detriment, as well as my benefit. But I think that's part and parcel of just we call it a spectrum, we call it a disorder, whatever. It's just a variation of human nature, right? His type is that he doesn't hold his tongue and he doesn't sort of deal with hurdles. And so there's a good side of that and a bad side of that. And when the Cybertruck video came out, some of my crew got, kind of hate mail from their friends, like, how could you do this? And I certainly got flamed on how do you resolve your personal feeling, or one of the ones was like, how do you resolve your feelings on free speech versus Elon's with this car? Like, how do you make those things all happen? And my answer is very simple. It's I don't, right? I'm not here to judge his political standings. I don't really care, because in the pursuit of doing my job, I'm only here to convey information about a car, a product. And what I want to do is convey the truth and find the truth, understand what this vehicle can do, can't do, what it's made of, what it's not made of, what the consumers expect for it versus what it does. And I'll relay all that information. Where it comes to where you want to spend your money as a consumer, that is 100% up to you. And I respect anyone's opinion or decision to spend money or not spend money, or send an image or not send an image. It's not up to me to tell them where to do it, or even suggest that I should tell them where to do it. And so, on a personal basis, Jason as a human being, well, he obviously, that's me for the record, he obviously has his own feelings about where he's going to spend money and where not. I work really hard for the shit amount of money that I get. And so I'm going to think really hard about where I want to spend it. And the priority on the product, is the priority on the avatar that the product is, the image that I project to the rest of the world when I'm driving it, is the priority on my feeling about what its my understanding of what its environmental impact is, or is it saying something about the people who produced it? I mean, my e-golf was produced under the watchful eyes of Fred MPA, and he's the same man who pushed forward the Bugatti Veyron, and he resurrected the Bentley brand and turned Lamborghini around. And I mean, he's just this master. As you can tell, I'm working on doing a video on him, and he's a master of changing the industry. Well, his dad and his uncle were both in jail for Nazi war crimes. And okay, let me say investigated for, and then ultimately found no charges were pressed, but they spent a year in jail, whatever, blah, blah, blah. My point is, start looking back. There are a lot of shady ass players on every side. And I will say, I made the decision of purchasing that e-golf based on things that had nothing to do with the political leanings and standings of the people behind it. I made it solely based on its performance and how it met my particular brand of needs. And so the political debate is a really difficult one because Elon is certainly pissing off a lot of people. He's making a lot of people happy. He's pissing them off. Then he's making them happy. Then, and he's got a lot of companies and he's got his irons in a lot of different fires. Everyone should be making a decision about whether they want to support that with their own money on their own individual basis. I respect that. My only concern is that we all, as a society, are working on the same truth. And we have a hard time these days distinguishing between opinion and fact. And
very true.
That's where I really draw a very, very hard line in the sand and say, I'm going to, when I have my hat on as an automotive journalist, I'm going to work as a journalist and I'm going to talk about the product and in terms of facts. When I'm an opinion maker, either when my old columns that I had in Road and Track or something, or a podcast, I'll say, this is just my opinion, but, and I will make sure that opinion is based on fact first. And I'm totally happy to discuss it with everyone, but I don't want to ever ram that down everyone else's throat. And I feel like Elon is sort of guilty of the same, I don't want to say it's malfeasance. It's not. I guess he's guilty of the same thing. He's got a platform, he's got a voice, and he's got a megaphone, and a lot of people are listening to him. And I just wish that a lot of the people who had megaphones, from journalists to politicians to CEOs, would really think twice about their public image and really think twice about wielding the power that they do to influence a lot of people, because we don't have a lot of critical thinking in this country. And now I sound like I'm on a political rant, and I'll end it.
Keep going.
There's I think, a dearth of critical thinking. And, I want people to be able to think for themselves. And those who have the power to convey information, I think, have a responsibility to fact check that and make sure it's accurate and say, these are the facts. And let's sit down in a civil discussion and agree on what the facts are first. Then we can fight about our opinion on it, right? Elon did this. Elon did that. Tesla did this. Tesla did that. Let's agree on the facts first. Then let's pull the gloves off and beat the shit out of each other and have a great knockdown, drag out fight about whether we like it or not. That's a different conversation. But I won't go there. And I wish a lot of people who had megaphones felt the same way, because you don't give a shit what I think about these cars. Or Jason, sorry, I've just talking about him in the third person. Nobody cares what Jason thinks about this. I'm here on your show because I'm an automotive expert and I had access to the Cybertruck and you didn't, right? And that's why. And so you want to talk about the Cybertruck, and I think that's great. I want to talk about that, but I'm not going to tell you or your audience what Elon should be doing and what he should be saying and what we should be thinking, or, for example, whether 7,000-pound SUVs are good for the environment or not. Not my lane. I'm going to stay clear of that discussion. I'll talk about it with my friends. We can all have our opinions on it, but it's an overreach. And I think some of what Elon says is an overreach and isn't necessarily 100% factual, in that it's kind of spun with his opinion on there and looks like fact. And so if Elon were sitting here talking to me, I would say, dude, just please be careful with the power you wield, because by virtue of being such an amazing pioneer and engineer, you've earned, not been given, earned a lot of power. Careful, please. By the way, keep shitting on all the other car companies, because this makes for good drama. I mean, I love the fact that they sent that PDF to all these other car companies that said how to engineer a 48-volt vehicle. I love that somebody on the internet fact checked it because they thought I was bullshitting. And actually then, Farley from Ford is like, oh yeah, I got it.
Yeah, we got it.
I don't love that it came in the day after the video went live, but whatever. They said they sent it, and apparently at least Ford got it. So like that's just the biggest boink to everyone in the business, and I live for that kind of shit because it's moving the progress of the automobile, and that's what I want to see.
Yeah, no, that's I love what you just said. I think it's a very important and super valid, really advice for everybody. Is that, as you know, there's a reason why that whole saying, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, right? I mean, I think what's fascinating there is when humans have access to power, it's like there's this range of people that completely misuse it, and it's like it's rare to find people that use it perfectly. And I think if we all aspire to use that power as responsibly as possible, I think there's no reason why that's not good for everybody, right? So I think the overarching premise there is beautiful, and I wish more journalists would have the mentality. You know, one of the things you guys said in the Carmudgeon show was like, you know, I wish other companies did with their cars what Tesla and Lucid would doing with theirs in a car that I actually want. I think that was one of the quotes you made.
I think Derek said that, yeah.
Yeah, I think Derek said that. And I think what's fascinating about journalism is I wish all the places where I look for news would care about that as much as you care about cars and reporting on being a journalist for cars. You know what I'm saying? So kudos to you for being one of the shining lights in freaking journalism, man, because we need that.
Thank you. I mean, look, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. My job title says journalist, and that doesn't mean influencer. No one's paying me to fucking say a word ever. Right. I'm not, you know, it would be a quick buck that would destroy my career. And my career is based on, let me do my best. Look, do I fuck up? Of course I make mistakes. I'm human. But you know, my job is to convey information and stop. And it's easy to let your ego say, well, these people care about me and they care about what I think. No, they care about the cars. And you know, if you have that platform, it's so easy to, if you have a megaphone that's big, it's so easy to turn around and be like, ha, look, this is revenge of the nerds, right?
Sure.
Elon was a nerd growing up. I'm sure I was a nerd growing up, and I would love to just go beat up on all those. Yeah. Shocker. We're all in the same industry. But, you know, it's really fun to do that. But at the end of the day, that's not really fair to everyone. And I'm hoping that we can all have do a little bit better in this country at having reasonable discourse and not
for sure
just, you know, shitting on each other all the time.
I agree 100%. I would love to see that. Let me ask you one more question, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. How are you in time? You're good?
I'm good. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. So Tesla's planning on coming out with a $25,000 compact car in the next couple years. How do you think that's going to impact the overall automotive market?
I can't wait, right? I mean, first of all, if they come out with a Volkswagen Golf sized hatchback that, you know, that drives well, sign me up personally. I can't wait. I think that, as usual, Tesla's timeline is a little bit longer than than I think Elon likes to make it. So I see, here we are back at Elon. I think Tesla as a company often promises cars before they're ready. And I think the industry as a whole occasionally does that. Like, you know, Acura did that 10 years. They showed an NSX 10 years too soon. And by the time the thing happened, we were all sick of hearing about it. I wish that Tesla would meter out some of that information a little bit more slowly, because I don't really think, I was shocked to hear Elon actually say on Sandy Munro's podcast that they're sort of working in a factory to build the $25,000 car. Because it was my understanding this thing didn't even exist yet. And, you know, I do know enough people. I'm in the Bay Area, so I know enough people who work at Tesla who until recently were not working on that Cybertruck. They were doing other stuff. And so I know everything's sort of phased in at the last absolute second. So I don't think it's going to be as early as we're led to believe it is. Just like I don't think Cybertruck production is going to ramp up anytime soon. However, I had a meeting with Lars, who's the VP of engineering, and another gentleman whose name I cannot remember, who's the VP of software. And years ago, I was at Road and Track, and I wrote a bunch of columns based on this interview. And some of the things, most of it was on the record, and then they were sort of picking my brain about different, like, why would we continue to do this? And I think that was kind of stuff that was off the record. when I think about that conversation and I think about the way these guys and girls think about how a car is engineered and what needs to be there and what no longer belongs in a modern space, I am so looking forward to seeing what they can produce, because I think it will genuinely change what we understand about efficiency. And in this sort of next chapter of the automobile, where it's electric and battery power, efficiency is king and is 100% of everything. It's the single most important thing, with nothing in second or fifth place. And their ideas, whether they're possible to put in production or not, are just mind blowing. And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm waiting for that next sea change of, well, we think, the sort of 4 miles per kilowatt hour is the barrier. Watch this at 6 or 7, which, I don't know, I'm genuinely making those numbers up, but that's the sort of thing that I wouldn't have passed these guys, these folks, like not Lucid, not Tesla, certainly, neither of those two companies. And so that changes everything. When you suddenly have a car that's so efficient, we look at the efficiency of Model 3, and it's one of the most efficient vehicles ever produced, top 3, top 2, whatever it is. And I did hear some stories about when the Hyundai Kona, I think it was, came out. There was some fuss internally because it beat Model 3 in terms of efficiency. And efficiency is what Tesla does best. And the joke was they started looking at this car, which had a torsion beam rear suspension and skinny little tires and no performance potential. And the reality was it barely beat, and it barely beat a Model 3, which can beat a BMW M3 around a racetrack. Model 3 and M3 are the same name for a reason. Of that, I'm certain. Elon's far too smart for this. And that, that Model 3 has really replaced, as I said, the BMW sort of M3 as the daily driver for enthusiasts. Here's a car with all of these competing priorities, the Model 3. It has to be stupid fast. It has to be stupid unbelievably at handling. It has to be all of it has to be the safest crash test, or the best crash test result ever made. Oh, and also it has to be the most efficient thing in the world. Well, its competitors that are almost efficient don't have any of those competing priorities. And so I know that in the brouhaha that resulted internally at Tesla over that car, they went back and put one of the Tesla powertrains in a sort of econo box car without those priorities, and they obliterated the efficiency. And so what I'm really looking forward to is a sort of uncompromised product, one where Tesla's engineers are allowed to say, we don't have to be 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. We don't have to do these braking distance performance. What we're going to do is a car that's for commuters, and doesn't have to be a luxury product, and doesn't have to do this, and doesn't do that, and just concentrate on efficiency. And I think we'll have another one of these, oh my God moments. How do they do it? And I think they'll do it long before any other traditional car maker will. So yeah, super looking forward to it.
I love that take. The way I think about that product is when you start going down the sort of the total addressable market of vehicles, you start at the high end, you got your Bugattis, you got your Ferraris, you got your Paganis and all that stuff. Like, no one gives a crap about price. It's like, I just want this thing to make me feel a certain way, and I want other people to look at me in this thing, and I want them to feel a certain way towards me, right? That's like how people shop about the cars in that standpoint. You go all the way down to the $25,000 market. It's how much car can I get for $500 a month? How much car can I get for $400 a month, right? And so I think that's where Tesla is with sort of what you just said, which is so fascinating. I love what you brought up there with the efficiency. That lends directly to cost of ownership. That lends directly to dollars per mile, right? And so I'm almost wondering if Tesla will be able to, because they're so vertically integrated, like, could we live in a world where this compact car is, let's say, $500 all in, and Tesla gives you not just the vehicle payment, because they'll have the point of sale tax credit on top of that as well, which will help with the monthly payment. But because it'll be 100% focused on efficiency and, let's say, reliability, they'll also say for $30-50 a month, we'll just take care of the car for you if you need to bring it in for any repairs. And then we'll include the charging for $30 a month as well. And then we'll also give you the insurance. And if you use full self-driving, then we'll make sure that's as low as possible. And then they'll have a package that says for $400 to $500 a month, you can drive a Tesla, brand new Tesla, and never have to worry about anything. Do you think something like that?
Of course, that's it. That's Tesla's model, full vertical integration. Let me own the dealership and the customer experience and the charging and the car and the suppliers and the individual components and the styling and the service and everything else in between. And that's what's made it so successful. In the same way that Apple's so successful. I mean, I have an iPhone right here. I'm talking to you on a Mac, and it's not because I was a Mac fan. I was a huge diehard Microsoft Windows nerd. I wanted my BlackBerry. I wanted all this other stuff. But then this first time I experienced Apple customer service versus Dell customer service. Well, you call Dell and, hey, this doesn't work. And they're saying, well, hold on, that's a software issue. So you got to call Microsoft, and you call Microsoft, and Microsoft's like, no, that's a driver interrupt issue. So you're going to have to call NVIDIA, and then you call NVIDIA, and it's blame game all around the circle. Right. Same thing when you go and you work on a car, right? I just have a friend who's got a Chrysler 200 that's giving him all kinds of shit. And I'm scanning it and I'm going through every single module, and every single module on the car is owned by a different company. This one's Magneti Marelli. That one's Bosch. That one's this. That one's Chrysler. This one's Mopar. That is there. And they don't talk to each other and nothing works. Diagnosing that car, which is driving me crazy because I thought I fixed it and I didn't, is infuriating. And so all of this as a customer experience is better when it's vertically integrated. And so when Tesla starts offering insurance, there's not going to be any of this, well, we're not going to pay for OEM parts bullshit that you get from third party anyone. And obviously Tesla doesn't have this with charging, but it's not going to be you want to reboot your car because the charger's not recognizing it. It'll just work. And that is, do I really think there's going to be a $25,000 car? Maybe a model, in the same way that there was a $40,000 Model S and a $40,000, like whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, I do think they will eventually come up with a transportation device that, look, Model Y, I believe, is the best transportation device on the planet now, as it is. I think they will make one that is more affordable and an even better transportation device, fully vertically integrated, where the consumer just no longer thinks about what broke, what tires, what this, what insurance, what, electrical provider, and just uses it as transportation. And if I'm in FSD and the car has an accident, and my insurance company is the same company that wrote the FSD software, then they take liability for it. Like you sort of start to see an ecosystem in a world where it's the Apple thing. I dropped my phone and broke it. I kicked it. It stopped working. The camera gets fucked up. I just go to an Apple store and they just hand me a new one. And I just get Apple Care again and again and again. And I keep buying a new phone because I just don't want to deal with it. Like, get this phone out of my face. It's just a tool that I want to work, and I'm sick of it. And I think I'm sick of having to fight with Dell and NVIDIA and whatever. Same thing with cars. I think that's the real benefit. And so, yeah, that if that $25,000 car becomes a $40,000 car, which, by the way, the average transaction price of a car last year was 53, was it?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Becomes a $35,000 car. The idea is, here is a car that normal people can afford, that just takes the stress and agita, to use a New York Italian term, out of car ownership. Boom, they're taking over the world.
Yeah.
I'll still want a Miata for fun. I'll still want a Porsche for the back roads. I'll still take my old, gas powered, whatever it is. But for transportation, I'll sit in the back seat and have it Jetson style to my destination, and I'm not going to worry about it. And that's the ultimate luxury.
Yeah. And then from the standpoint from other automakers like the OEMs, do you think this is how large of a disruptive force do you think this is? And do you think this is just a market for Tesla to gobble up if they're able to achieve that price point and that sort of convenience?
This is where it feeds back into the polarization of Elon's persona, right? I think if he were a little bit more down the middle, personally, he can do whatever he wants while wielding that lightsaber, that sword. If he were a little bit more, I'm just not going to piss anyone off, and I'm just going to get my product out the best way I can, I think Tesla could be poised to put everyone out of business, or at least genuinely force a full rethink. And the car companies are all scrambling right now. The overwhelming response from every single car company is panic. You talk to anyone. 10 years ago, they were still laughing. 8 years ago, they were still laughing. The Germans, I speak German, and I would go on these German car launches, and they didn't know that I would speak German. So I'd be sitting in the background, and they'd be laughing at the magazines. Look at this idiot saying this. Somebody's going to be buying a Tesla. It happened to me on a Porsche launch, actually, where they were reading my article about Model S. And the title of the sort of headline was "The Last Time an American Car Mattered on the Global Stage, It Had Fins." And so I got a Model S together with all these finned 1950s cars. And it was a big thing about like, whoa, hold on, this is different. And they were in German. This idiot doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, blah, blah. And we're all sitting at dinner or at breakfast table.
And you're right there.
And I was just laughing. And I just turned around at one point when the conversation was done. I'm like, I wrote that. And, I'm like, this car doesn't exist. It's not on the roads. And I'm like, really? Go to Palo Alto. Go anywhere in the Bay Area. They're everywhere. And they were like, what? Really? They're on the road? And I'm like, yeah. They're like the number one selling car in the Bay Area at the moment. And, they were laughing for far too long. And then this is the same company, by the way, Porsche, that comes out with a Taycan with a 2-speed automatic transmission in the rear for efficiency. Really? You just made the least efficient EV ever tested by the EPA when it came out. What for efficiency? What? Oh, but also for speed. Oh, what, I can't keep up with a P90D ludicrous? Like what? Huh? Yeah. So, they really had a hard smackdown. That's, I use that as an example of what all the traditional car companies have experienced. And it's taken them a long time to be sort of smacked awake. And I don't know if they can react quickly enough. Every time I say no, it's yes. Every time I say yes, it's no. So I don't know.
Yeah. The fascinating thing is I see some, like, for example, Kia Hyundai. I feel like they have a really good strategy from an EV perspective because they're actually trying to go down market. They're trying to say just cheapest cost per mile because that's what the EV is phenomenal for, and let's give them as much range as we think we can stuff in a package where somebody can afford it. And I feel like that's the equation. Like, why isn't everybody doing that? But it's much easier said than done. Obviously,
it is much easier said than done. But they have to realize that the automobile is now a commodity. Everyone can build one. Everyone can make a good one if they put a little bit of effort into it. So now the differentiator becomes efficiency, and that means cost. At the end of the day, it all trickles down to cost. And if I can have my transportation get me from A to B for a tenth the price and no worry and no stress, I'm going to choose that, especially if it's a desirable avatar. So they're right.
Awesome. All right, let's do some Q&A here. I don't want to keep you super long. You've already been very kind with your time. I'm having I could talk to you for like 10 hours, bro. You're awesome.
Thank you.
You're the best, dude. I appreciate you so much. All right, let's bring up some questions for Jason. Drop your questions in the comment section below. Producer wife will be starring them as they come along. All right, let's start with Pete. $5 super chat. If you're ever in Austin, Jason, that's the beer budget. So I can buy you at least one beer.
Okay. Pete, put your shirt on. It's cold this winter. I'm kidding.
Awesome review. Have you learned anything since Cybertruck reveal you wish you had included in the review?
Ooh. Yes, I'm sure there are things. Oh God, that's annoying. Let me come back to that one because I think there were a couple things where I'm like, crap. But I can't remember what they are.
No problem. We'll come back to it. No problem at all. Let's see. Question from John. Do you think Toyota will survive as they don't really have an EV?
I think Toyota is really well positioned for the next 5 to 10 years as we transition to EVs. And I think there's a term in the tech industry or in business called first mover advantage, where you're the first to market and you're the one that actually benefits from that. And I think really in the automotive space, there's very much a first mover disadvantage because you're paying to pioneer all of this technology, and you are the beta tester. In this case, so many other car companies are so busy spending their R&D budgets inventing and perfecting this technology that I think Toyota, which is like most traditional car companies, not much more than a supplier, an assembler of supplier sourced products, will be able to just ramp up very quickly when they need to. So yes, I think Toyota will survive.
Awesome. Question. Any reason towing or carrying stuff was not tested or shown as part of the script for Cybertruck? I'm assuming it was time limitations, if I were to guess.
Yeah, that's a perfectly valid question. It was just time. We had one day moving with the Cybertruck and one day static. And I didn't do off-road, for example, because we really had about 6.5 hours of filming, 7 hours because of the daylight. And getting stuck could have been a 3-hour ordeal, and towing something could have been an hour and a half just to set it up. So it just became, let me go through this, figure out what I can do in the least amount of time possible that has the most impact. And so it was things like, the acceleration thing. Okay, that's a world record. Let's highlight that. And the super wire, that's a world first. Let's highlight that. But I wish I would have had time. Absolutely.
Let's do one with a Philippe question. This is a great one. What do you love most about doing car videos? And if so, what parts of that process do you dislike? Thanks, you're the GOAT of car videos. And I agree with that last statement as well.
Well, thank you, guys. Thank you, Philippe. The part that I love is learning. I love interacting with the engineers who make this stuff, because what they do is they take nuts and bolts and pieces and they bring something that's so close to a living thing, we anthropomorphize it. We call them names. We fall in love with these cars. We say they have personalities. And watching the struggles that engineers go through with the business side of the business. Hey, we have to make this, but we have this headwind or this hurdle or whatever else. And watching the solutions they come up with is my favorite thing in the world to do. And then the second thing, favorite thing to do is then tell you guys all about it, because and find fun ways and stupid gags and holding wiper blades up like a penis, and because I have the intellect of a 12-year-old. That always makes me laugh. So I love that. The process that I hate is the risk of damaging a car or hurting someone, and the stress on me until the second we wrap the production. I'm always just a lunatic full of nerves.
Would you say it's a love-hate relationship, or is it mostly a love with some hate in it? Like, how would you describe that?
I hate the process. I love having done it. It's not that, hold on, I shouldn't say I hate the process. We have a lot of fun occasionally, but there are, I have a direct line to all the OEMs. So I'm the one having to convince them to give us cars. And that is genuinely hell interacting with car companies, because nobody wants to lose anything, and they're always worried about losing their fucking jobs. And it's my job to sort of yell back at them and be like, make a better product. Like if you didn't win, make a better product. So I really genuinely absolutely despise that part of the job. And then I love the process of sitting with Anthony Esposito and trying to outdo each other, making each other laugh, coming up with fun ways of conveying information. So yeah, definitely love it.
Yeah. What I love about that answer, real quick, is the one thing I always hear is, if you do something you love, you will feel like you've never worked a day in your life. But I feel like that's such a bullshit statement. What do you think about that? All
of this fucking gray hair is from doing something I love. Doing something you love means you don't have an off switch. Right. I work from the second I open my eyes until the second I pass out. And it's because I love every part of it. And then, then you look around, you're like, hold on, I'm old, I'm gray. I'm like, what the hell happened? Oh, sorry about that weird ass Apple thing. What happened? But your wife says, sounds like someone else I know.
Hello.
This is right. I mean, we work all the time because we love what we do. And then the hard part is just making sure there's limitations on it and going on vacation, which is something I've heard of and never done.
Yeah. Balance is an impossible mission for me. It's like I'm working at it every day.
Balance never met her. Yep.
Yeah. Will you actually buy a Cybertruck, Jason?
Doesn't fit any of my personal needs and doesn't fit in the geographic area where I live. My biggest car is my Golf, basically. Well, not really. I mean, I have a Rover that's a little bit big and a minivan for truck use. Yeah, no need.
Let's do one with Jeff. Outstanding video, my favorite review. Have you given further thoughts on Cybertruck's accessory ecosystem possibilities? Seems like it's going to blow up, not discussed much. Have you, any thoughts there?
Yeah, totally. And actually that goes back to the first question, which is something you didn't know. They hadn't talked to me about the range extender battery, which I think is a brilliant idea. I'm pretty sure Rivian had talked about that in the past too. So yes, that's one thing I didn't know about that I wish I had talked about. I don't think it exists yet, but I think the concept is there. The accessory possibilities are enormous. And right off the bat, oh my God, they're going to kill me for not remembering their name. There's a Tesla racing company that already has a line of accessories out.
Unplugged?
Unplugged, yes. Craig's gonna kill me.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Craig. I mean, I think the possibilities are endless because look, Sandy Monroe wants to take it camping so that he can have an espresso machine with him, and it just sort of changes the way any vehicle like that, whether it's a Rivian, that's a pickup truck, traditional pickup truck's shape that has that much space and electricity, offers a whole new world of accessories, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Let's do a couple more here. Did you get a chance to test out the audio system? That's something that's been getting a lot of hype since the reviews came out. Did you get a chance?
I mean, okay, again, this is one of these things of priorities, right? I will be honest with you that I should probably post one of these stupid videos. I found a karaoke game while I was waiting through the menus, and I had Garth Brooks' Friends in No Places and a Reba McEntire song. And I'm not even that much, like, I'm in the country. I kept picking all kinds of stuff and doing karaoke at the top of my lungs. And I remember thinking, man, good sound system, but I really didn't pay much attention to it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's something I've been seeing. I know Tesla's been trying to hype up because they have 2 subwoofers or something in the car, and I think 15 speaker system or something. But
I do. I mean, I do in that sort of limited, stupid use case. I did think, wow, okay, cool. It's got some bass. It's got great imaging, but I didn't pay close enough attention to be able to report on it like an audiophile would.
Gotcha. Let's see, Harvey. Do you think EV conversions will become popular and more affordable?
I think so. And I think they should. I mean, I think we have, as you know, we should sort of standardize a form factor for a battery. And there's no reason, like, I think Lucid absolutely should be selling their little itty bitty tiny 600 horsepower motor on the aftermarket. So, somebody makes a relatively small battery pack in the form of a fuel tank that you can just make an adapter and mount where the fuel tank was, and then mount a little itty bitty tiny gearbox built in Lucid motor, maybe detuned to 200 horsepower or 300 horsepower, so it doesn't have crazy cooling needs. That would be fantastic, especially for older cars that where the powertrain doesn't define what it is. I'm not doing it in an old Ferrari, not doing it on something that's it's got a great engine in it, but like something like a Citroen DS, or a Rolls Royce, or something like an American luxury car. That's something that doesn't exist for its engine. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions to the engineers you thought they needed to change based on your experience?
Steering at first. So the first Cybertruck I drove was at the Fremont factory, and I thought the steering, the curve, i.e. the relationship between the steering wheel and the front wheels, was way too aggressive at very low speeds. And my feedback was, just because you can doesn't mean you necessarily should. And they toned it way down. They slowed it way down for the second truck that I drove, which is the one we did the video on. So I didn't really even comment on it so much. I did talk about that. I did want a better mirror. I would like the idea of the truck that they gave me didn't have a rear view mirror, and I wanted one, because it's one thing to be able to look in the camera and see if there's a car behind you. It's something else to have the resolution and the dynamic range to say, oh, those headlights are a Crown Vic. I shouldn't be speeding right now. Not that I would ever speed. So, there's that. I'm a little bit concerned about door pinch. Like those, you slam your finger in the door, you're probably losing your finger. I did cut my arm and my shirt on one of it's the leading edge of a hood or fender, one of them, over at that intersection. And Anthony cut his jacket open. So we said, look, hey guys, you gotta bevel that. Like, okay, I didn't get stitches, but the car bit, and car shouldn't bite.
Fair enough. And then let's do one more here, and then we'll let you go. What is Jason's take on full self-driving?
Oh, this is another media circus. Okay, so FSD isn't FSD, and we all know it, right? This is another step towards autonomy that I think is necessary. And if you understand the way machine learning happens, this is what we need to be doing. Should Tesla have called it that? That's a matter of opinion. You're entitled to your own. I would say perhaps it's a little bit early to call it full self-driving, because on the face of it, it's kind of not. But it's a necessary take, and it's a step in the right direction. It's pretty good. It's pretty damn good sometimes, and it's pretty damn awful some others. And so, it's one of the better systems out there. Everyone's kind of catching up. And I look forward to when we really have something called full self-driving. That is actually full self-driving. This ain't it. We know that. It's a marketing play. Great. they're doing it the right way with machine learning. But I think, again, critical thinking. People, do your homework. It's not you can't go take a nap in the back. And I think the sort of deaths that have resulted are from people who haven't done the critical thinking. That's a little bit unfair and that's harsh. Let me point that out. But I think it wouldn't surprise me to learn that a lot of the injuries and deaths that have happened are for people who trusted the system probably more than they ought to have. And maybe Tesla relies on a critical thinking, a level of critical thinking and technical understanding that most consumers don't have. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think that's super fair. Okay. Jason, dude, this was awesome. Thank you so much for all the work you do, man. Like I said before we went live, and I just love the work Hagerty does, and I think they're very lucky to have you on staff, and you do such phenomenal work. I think your knowledge of the automotive just sector, the industry, the fact that you're a car enthusiast yourself, but you're able to really understand the full picture of and the history of vehicles, and I don't know, man. I just think you do great work, and thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really enjoyed this conversation, bro.
I appreciate you having me here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. And for those of you at home, if you want to see lots of stuff about not necessarily just EVs, because I like all kinds of stupid things, just follow me. Find me wherever you can find me. Appreciate that.
Awesome. At Jason Cammisa on X, formerly known as Twitter, Hagerty, and then the Carmudgeon Show as well on YouTube.
And Instagram is really where I post the most. I'm sorry to say, because I know you
and Instagram.
Really on X. Yeah.
It's all good. Instagram, everywhere.
I
Facebook, who cares?
Listen, I'm turning into one of these influencers who's like, smash that like button, subscribe, whatever. I'm not doing that, I swear.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Maz. Thank you, everybody in the comments section. And of course, thank you, producer wife, the lovely producer wife, for producing the show. And we'll see you on the next one. Take it.